like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
Alright, turn on the fucking music. Let's play now. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Jeff Ament. Mama Queen. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. And guess what? This is a re-record because sometimes, a lot of you know this that have been following the podcast for a while or just know John and I as individuals, that we're very much in a routine to where sometimes John and I don't even have to say anything. We just show up when it's time to record and we just go and record. And that happens every Friday night. The consistency in this time period means that we do have to kind of change it up a little bit whenever there is something that breaks, whenever we have new news, because yes, there is an album that's coming out in exactly a month. So on Sunday, when we got the little snippet for something special, I was like, oh, okay, it's only 20 seconds or something, then I'll throw a little, I was going to do a Randy from the Future thing and throw that in after we had mentioned something and be like, oh, actually, we got the, because we talked a lot about, in the first take of this, we talked a lot about Dark Matter and kind of where it was in the hype of all what was going on, and basically, it was the exact opposite of everything that we're going to talk about now. It was kind of contradictory, but with the pointing the phone at the sky snippet, because of course you can't go a record now without pointing your phone at the sky for whatever reason. Now this gives us a reason to do a full re-record and really chime in on these two snippets that we have about 20 and 30 seconds for, and dig into new music, because that's essentially what we have right here. But I don't want to push the main focus of the episode out of the way, and that's the Eindhoven show from 1992, recommended to us by Bouk Geisbergs. So thank you very much, and we'll tell her story and everything like that. But we are going to kick this off with Dark Matter, so let's go. Randy Sobel over here, John Farrar over there.
Hello.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. To tell the whole story, we started off the initial recording saying, you know what? We haven't gotten a lot of hype from Dark Matter in the last 2 weeks. And we should have seen this coming because, of course, with the month out, there was going to be something at some point. And then right in the last couple of days, we were just heavy loaded and got everything that we were looking for, essentially.
Yeah, and in the original, I think I had even mentioned, like, oh, what I would give to point my phone at the sky, making like a Gigaton reference, and lo and behold, that is what we had to do.
I said, be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, regardless of that, I don't care. I'll point my phone at a toilet if it means getting a new snippet of a song. So let's kind of start with what we got first, the Something Special. And actually, it's Something Special. The Something Special is a Bouncing Souls song, but that's regardless of this conversation. Something Special was used on a March Madness tease that got sent out through Twitter. It's not much of it, but you get the sense of kind of the swing for the song, and it's a lot different than what they gave you with Dark Matter. And it feels like from a lot of the reviews, you get the sense that, this was going to be a very heavy record, but you have to think that, yeah, having 60-year-olds in this band doesn't mean every single song is going to sound like that. You're going to have some of the ups and downs and highs and lows, of course. And this one feels more mid-tempo. It's kind of got like a little bluesy swing to it. It reminds me in spots, especially the bluesy spot at the end where a lot of people thought that sounded like Let the Records Play. I've been comparing that to Lover's Rock by The Clash, just kind of like a little just creamy blues riff. And, on first listen, it wasn't really something I gravitated towards, but look, they're 20 seconds long. I'm not going to put much weight into these. I'm going to get excited if I hear something good, and I'm just going to wait it out if I hear something that maybe didn't perk my ear as much. But this one, I don't think caught me right away, but I am excited to hear when the full song comes out.
Yeah, it's tough because the quality's not good. Like someone's talking over it. You don't get a clear sense of it, unlike the clip of the other song. But yeah, I mean, it reminded me a little bit of like the rhythm of something like It's Good to Be King off of Wildflowers, obviously, with Ed covering Wildflowers a lot, the Tom Petty all over Earthlings. That's kind of in my brain when we think of Ed songs now. So kind of had that a little bit more, like you said, kind of like a swing to it, a little more upbeat, a little jauntier. But yeah, I mean, only a 10 or 15-second clip. They seem to like holding back the choruses. So that's what I'm curious to hear is like what's going to be the hook of the song, these big choruses that are going to translate live. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like something that could be played in a sit down section. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and thankfully, what we did get today as well is we got an interview with Stone from our good friend and former guest of the show, and we're hoping that we can get him back on in April before the album comes out. Jonathan Cohen, you guys know he's been on the show a bunch of times, and he did a tremendous job interviewing Stone. And one of the things that was in that interview that was revealing was that that's basically a Josh riff right there for the Something Special. So I wonder, kind of resigned to be like, oh, well, if you hear something that's a little like bluesy or anything like that, that's got to be Mike. But I'm wondering if that's a Josh riff, if he's the one that was
Yeah.
kind of the guy that pushed the song along.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's normally just been the five of them. And we know that Andrew Watt's playing some guitar. It just shows that they're open to input from anyone, and Josh was a big part of the band for the last couple of years, really helped him out. Abe had to step in and play drums a couple of times. I think that's the one the lyrics to are about Ed's daughters. So we know that's going to be a little more of a personal one, a little more, that you're not going to write that song and then have it be a Lucan-esque stomp. So yeah, going to be one of the more sentimental ones maybe, but it feels like there's going to be enough rock for everyone to latch onto.
Yeah, certainly. And that's exactly what we got from the running snippet, which, if you pointed at the sky, that's what you heard today. Or people were saying they were able to point it at like a fluorescent light bulb or something like that. So, if you didn't want to step outside for whatever reason or you were working or something,
It's
you're
dark
still
matter
able to
all
get
over.
it.
Yeah.
So, what'd you think about running? And a lot of what we talked about in the initial recording was the Mojo article. And I think we're probably going to talk a little bit more about Jonathan Cohen's article because that's fresh in people's minds. And I think that really gave a sense of the direction that Dark Matter is heading in. And one of the things that was said in the David Frick piece was that he called running a Fugazi blitz. And while I really enjoyed what I heard from that little snippet, I didn't sense Fugazi at all. But we're going to talk a lot about Fugazi in this show, in this episode. So, this is kind of all stemming at the right time. But obviously, I'm not the Fugazi expert in this at all. But thankfully, we have somebody that is. So, where does this need to go in order to get there?
That's a good question. I think it needs to be a little more angular and like a little screamier. When I first read about this song, that's kind of what I was hoping for. And when I first heard the clip, I was like, oh, maybe this is running because it's a little bit faster, got a little more of a tempo to it. You hear Ed say fucking very early on in the clip.
How about a sewage and plumbing line?
Yeah. All different kinds of running going on in the song, evidently. But I like the clip. It feels like it's going to be one of my favorite songs from the record, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the song, you can tell. And like, my worry for this is it's just going to be so overproduced, but that sometimes can keep you from going back to a studio version if it's just too busy. But again, we focus on live stuff. This is one of the ones that I'm really looking forward to see what they do with live and see how it plays out. Because I think we know that this is supposedly has a big sing along, pump your fist chorus, and very excited to hear that. That could be Fugazi, as they were known for having early on at least those anthemic kind of choruses. So we'll
You
see how
are
it
not
plays out.
what you own. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that. What I'm interested here is that in Cohen's article with Stone, he says that there's a little snippet after waiting for Stevie. And that kind of gets you into running. Like, one of the things that Frick mentioned was that there's a pool cue that goes off in the beginning before Scared of Fear, and then there's this little transitional thing before running. So I wonder how that's going to work. And then that's kind of seemed like a Jeff and Andrew kind of thing.
I
So
Davenita Part 2, maybe.
it could be. I mean, it's
If
not its
only.
own
Yeah,
track, but
yeah.
look, if it's anything like the transition from Brain of J into Faithful, like sign me up. I'm freaking
Mm,
in on that.
yeah.
Let's talk a little more about what Stone had to say. What perks your mind here? What perks your ears? Like what gets you excited more for the album hearing this now?
Yeah, I mean, a song that I really had forgotten about until I read it was Won't Tell, which we know is one that Jeff had worked out and had a big part in. And that's one now that I'm very curious to hear.
Yeah, going back to Jeff's contributions for Gigaton, we know
Yeah.
that All Right is his, which is a little spacey. It kind of gets a little atmospheric and goes in a lot of different directions. And then he was a big factor on Quick Escape as well. He kind of put the melody together and everything like that. So Jeff has had a very prominent writing position in the last couple of years with this band, which he has kind of a tell with his songs. You can tell that it's his style, like what he's going for.
Yeah, I hope this one continues that tradition. I hope it's a little bit left of center, a little bit weirder.
Some of the stuff that I'm really looking forward to, I love the idea of Got to Give. It's an Ed song that has a Who rock vibe and a little lead guitar that is kind of a fun melodic thing that Stone says. And he wants to play this song live. He's excited for that. Setting Sun being an epic closer to the record. And, we've gotten amazing closers before. Pearl Jam is really, really good at opening the record and closing the record. So all eyes are on both Setting Sun and Scared of Fear to how you're going to impact right away and then finish up at the end. And I'm interested to see how both of those dynamics work and kind of what the bookend to that is going to be like. Because, yeah, as I mentioned, it kind of has like an ambience intro in there. And this is something that a couple people have said kind of remind them of Master Slave a little bit. So I'm interested to see how that all kind of connects there. But there's also a song, I think it's Waiting for Stevie, that Stone says, I'm curious where it ends up sitting in the pantheon
Yeah.
for the Pearl Jam fans.
Yeah, that's one that they compared to like the stuff from Singles, like a more of a Breath style, State of Love and Trust style. The title, I mean, given it came from something that they were working on when they were waiting for Stevie Wonder to show up during the Earthling sessions, and ended up going back to, which the title could have nothing to do with the rest of the song, but that's another one that's I'm curious to hear because it seems like we've always known them to be looking forward and all this, and to have them come out and say, "Oh, this sounds like this very specific thing from our very early days." We'd never heard that before.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then Upper Hand is another one we haven't mentioned yet. I feel like you got to get familiar with the names of these songs now because we've just kind of been sitting on Dark Matter and we know a couple of the other ones have kind of stuck in my head, but like Upper Hand and Won't Tell, those are two songs that I've just sort of forgotten about entirely, but I like the idea of what Cohen says to be somewhat resigned, a little all those yesterdays parachutes, which, and Stone says it, he has kind of two parts in the song that evolved the song. So I'm interested in that. Like all of it sounds like stuff that, I mean, it's classic Pearl Jam in a way, and it's mixing a bunch of different genres together. It's finding out what works. And honestly, it's seeing what they have with Andrew Watt too, because there's been a lot of debate, good and bad, about what people think that Watt's going to bring to the table for this. And it feels like from everything you read from the guys is that he kind of put them up to the task and said, you know what? Here's the challenge. Let's go. You guys are pros. I want to see what I can get from you. And he got a little bit of every era, it seems. So that is essentially what to look forward to for the record for now. No, as of right now, we don't have a second single. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's something special. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's wreckage or something like that. Who knows? But there's going to be a lot more hype in the coming weeks. I can assure you that. And look, if we have to re-record an episode again, this is just a portion of an episode, like 15 minutes. But if we got to re-record it again, we'd be happy to, because this is what you guys deserve and what everybody wants to be talking about. So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed that little splice. And now, from this point forward, is the rest of the episode that we recorded on Friday. Let's get into a little bit of the story from our patron Bauk. And she didn't go to the show, which is interesting. She was only 14 at the time, but she wanted to give a little bit of the background information on why she wasn't able to go and kind of what was going on and what the city of Eindhoven is like. So all this is really interesting. I'm going to just read all of this to you guys right now. Let's get some background information first. Eindhoven is a city in the south of the Netherlands. Many tourists don't go further than Amsterdam, but Eindhoven is much cooler and has fewer canals to fall into when you're drunk or stoned, or both. Many bands have played the FNR, I hope I pronounced that correctly, before they became big. The Red Hot Chili Peppers preceded Pearl Jam in 1988. And this year in October, Mudhoney will be at a festival in the FNR, and I'm going to go try and get my copy of Mud Ride by Steve Turner signed there. Anyway, Pearl Jam and FNR on March 5th, 1992. It was the fourth concert in the Netherlands. It should have been the fifth, but 2 days earlier in the performance in Nijmegen, I hope I didn't butcher that, was canceled due to Eddie's vocal problems. Unfortunately, Pearl Jam missed out on a legendary Dutch location, Doorn Rouge. Don't judge me. But fortunately, they can play in Tivoli in Utrecht a day before the show in the FNR. And at that show in Tivoli, Ed got his famous t-shirt. We had done that show a while ago. That is all covered in that. In 1992, I was a 14-year-old, and my taste in music was influenced by my brother, who was 8 years older than me. He liked Guns N' Roses and AC/DC and Pink Floyd, but also Obituary and Life of Agony. He wanted to go to the Pearl Jam concert in the FNR, but couldn't get a ticket. It sold out within 8 minutes, and I was not allowed to come in advance because of my age. I was so disappointed about that, but now that I've listened to the concert many times afterwards, perhaps it was a good thing that I was not there at the time and accidentally ended up in the pit. That could seriously damage my later quote-unquote career as a concert and festival goer. It was really packed inside, and on top of that, there were a lot of stage divers, which led to quite a bit of irritation on stage. Well, we will get to that, because they pulled cables loose and someone was seriously injured. You can read everywhere that the atmosphere was a bit tense, both among the audience and the band, and I can imagine that was due to the band's killer tour schedule. I think that the band barely knew what was happening to them at that moment. They saw few people that they knew, and they had no time to recover or process what they were experiencing. But what I would give to see Pearl Jam play 5 times in a row in the Netherlands. There is no show in the Netherlands on the upcoming world tour, which is a bit disappointing, but luckily I've found standing tickets for London, and I'm going away for a weekend with my best friend, leaving our husbands and children at home, which I'm really looking forward to. When you look back at the set list, you can only realize how good the songs from that era are. They're all still standing, and they are all on my wish list to see live, even though I have already seen most of them. I also think it's really cool that Eddie did a piece of suggestion by Fugazi in between, a bit of education for the Dutch public. I don't think Fugazi was a very well-known band in the Netherlands at the time, or still isn't. When I listened to this bootleg again some time ago, I thought it was a cover of... I can't be on board with this. Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's harsh.
I don't know. Maybe it's in the dialect and the way that the lyrics are going, but no, don't see it. I'm sorry, Bach. I wonder where Jeff's comment at the end of Deep suddenly came from, that it would be cool if a band came to play and only played Seattle band covers. I wonder to what extent the concept of the Seattle scene already been established in the Netherlands and whether the public knows what it's responding to. I also can't quite tell if there's something Jeff thinks at that moment, if there's some kind of frustration he's expressing. Do you know? Well, perhaps we can take a stab at it when that point comes a little bit later in the set. I have a tip for all the Dutch and Belgian listeners of your podcast. Okay, everybody in the Netherlands, everybody in Belgium, this is all for you, you guys, and anybody else that wants to take this in as well. During this period, Mark van Schaik was a journalist at the Dutch music magazine OOR. He first spoke with Eddie Vedder at the end of 1991, and partly thanks to this early meeting, got to speak to the band regularly. He wrote about this in the magazine and eventually wrote down his experiences and impressions surrounding the interviews in the book Why Go. That really is a must-read for Dutch Pearl Jam fans. So those are all really interesting points. It's a really interesting story. We love, and sometimes it does happen where we get requests from people that didn't go to the show that might have been listening to it on bootleg, or in this scenario is looking to go back and kind of feel like they were there by the retelling of some of these stories. So we'll do our best at that. I feel like we've kind of figured that out as time has gone by, but thank you, Buck, once again for sharing all that. That's very cool.
Yeah, great stuff. And especially getting it from European and getting kind of a little bit of the point of view that we don't normally get is very cool. So thanks for sending in that story.
Okay, then. I think we got a podcast to do. There were some things that she mentioned in there that kind of set the tone for this nicely. There was a show that was canceled, and as mentioned before, Den Haag, Utrecht, those were really big and turned into fan favorite shows with the bootleg collecting and everything like that and all that aspect. So, this being in the middle here, going to be interesting to see how this goes, and we'll have a lot of points to talk about. It's only 12 songs long, so we can kind of focus on as much as we possibly can with these songs. So why don't we just step in right now? Glue Man by Fugazi is playing in the background. That will come up later. If Balk is right, then Dutch fans wouldn't know what that song is, most likely.
Yeah, I think Fugazi had played in Europe, so maybe there were a few, but I don't think they had maybe broken there like some other bands.
And UK is a lot different than, Holland, so.
Yeah.
But midway through, you're just hearing the song, and Ed just comes out and says, all right, turn off the fucking music. We're here to play now. Okay, yeah, go. And it's funny because I wonder if he felt bad because Glue Man is going to come back up later, and he kind of sings a little bit of it, and I wonder if he felt bad, oh man, I had to turn that song off just because we want to get on stage and get going. So maybe that has some connection to that.
Yeah, but maybe, it had to have been their choice. They probably had, CD,
usually is.
Hey, play this before we come out. But, yeah, I think just after the night before, just wanting to get to it as fast as possible.
The opening song here is going to be Release.
Where
this feels a little bit more extended than usual, and the band sounds a little light in the mix. I feel like during release they were trying to figure out, who's kind of low and how are you hearing the drums and all that. And I wonder if that was a little bit of the part of why it was extended a little longer. But I don't know, like this was a really weird recording because a couple times in release, and I think one time in even flow, the audio in the right headphone cuts out for about a minute's portion of, I think, 2 parts of the song. You only hear it out of your left headphone. So that could be a mix thing, that could be a bootleg thing, just passed around through the generations and everything like that. But it's difficult to hear what's going on, and Ed's vocals are really, really light at first, and you hear that they get to pump them up a little bit, and Stone's really delicately playing that melody. It wasn't the traditional, like, heavy, emotional release start that we're known to have.
Yeah, I think this is a soundboard recording, so I think that's probably something with the board mix where it got cut out. Maybe something went wrong. These small clubs, especially in the middle of Europe, it's going to be hit or miss with the sound guy. Like, you never know what you're going to get. They obviously weren't to the point where they were bringing all of their techs and everything, sound people with them. Brett Eliason was not there to remedy that situation. But yeah, I agree. Release started off, just felt so slow to start off. And Release is not obviously a fast song to begin with, but just felt kind of plodding at first, like just trying to feel things out maybe. I think it does get there a little bit at the end. They start to put a little more power into it at the end, but even Ed comes on and says, oh, there's just a warm-up.
Yeah, it hits a little bit of a stride and accelerates a little bit, but it's tough because it just kind of all happened. It's not like the build got him to that point where you're like, ooh, that's that sweet spot with that song that we always hear. It just kind of was like, well, this didn't sound very good, so now let's actually tap into what we usually tap into with this. And it was off. And there are a couple performances here that just feel a little off. So hang tight with that. But Ed says, as you said, it's just a warm-up. Before we start, there's a girl whose mom followed her to the show just to make sure she's safe. Hey, Balka, you could have done that? I don't know if the girl was over 18 or not. I'm going to guess probably, but if you had parental supervision there, then could have been there maybe. But again, that's 32 years ago to this point, so we cannot go back into the DeLorean and change that, unfortunately. The next song in the set, very, very standard of 1992 to go from a release, Awash on Oceans, into Even Flow. And the thing I kept thinking about with Even Flow the whole entire time was that you just got to keep this in mind. Even Flow that we know now has turned into what it is because of the places they play. The big arenas, the massive amount of people that they're playing to. They turned a song that already had a ton of intangible factors as the solo and as the sing-along goes and everything like that, that the fans gravitated towards when they heard the single and bought the album. And when you do it in a big-time arena, that's when you can really make it a showcase moment. You can extend it, and Mike can do different tricks each time, and then Matt can do something, a solo, or just kind of push pace even faster. Whatever they plan to do with it, it's a highlight of the show, and it's always kind of in its usual spot. But this is a 500-person capacity club, and they loved performing in front of these clubs, especially after doing some of the arena stuff with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, opening for them a couple months before this. It definitely felt confident, but it also felt as though the gas wasn't fully on in a way. And it won't be the arena version. You have to take that out of your mind, of course. But it also felt like they could have given it a little bit of an edge, and it didn't quite get there.
Yeah, I expected it, when Even Flow starts, you expect it to like jump out of the speakers at you, like that first chord, and this one just, yeah, it just didn't. I kind of noticed as I'm going through listening to the first verse, I'm like, yeah, this didn't have that instant power, like smack you in the mouth that it has. It's very relaxed, like very more of like a groove focused version than like a powerful version. And I think you're missing too a lot of the. We know Ed has a sore throat, canceled the show 2 nights before. He's not doing those like yeah and like those little yelps and like vocalizations he does to kind of get everything going. And when you know that he's pushing it, like last week we had a very angry Ed episode, like a show, and this is not that. Like you expect, we sometimes think of '92 as like, oh, this grunge and they're angry and like the angst and everything, but this one felt just, the vibe is just not that on the show. It's a very relaxed and very easygoing. I mean, it just doesn't have that like bite that you expect from some of their early shows, and they can't all have them. Like I get it, but yeah, the even flow again. Like we're used to hearing that, the version from the video, the live version, and this one just didn't jump out at me like some of these early ones do.
Yeah, you can kind of tell what the version of Even Flow is when you look at the total runtime on it, and it pretty much matches what the studio album has. And that's what we had on this. All right, Ed is going to address the thing with his voice right here. He says, "We've played all 3 nights in a row, and really, I just can't believe we're in Holland. It's nice to be here. I think the other guys are okay, but I'm having a hard time getting into this tonight. So they'll help me get into it with this one." I think, yes, it's his voice, but I think there's something mental going on with Ed too. I think what we had talked about a little bit in those episodes back in March of 2022 was that they were starting to really get bothered by some of the crowd surfers and some of the stage divers and things like that. And I wonder if that in their head was getting to them. And I wonder if they were being more cautious about it because there's going to be an incident that happens at the show where the band is going to lose their temper. Jeff especially is going to lose their temper because they're pissed that they're going up there and they're not being careful and they are only focusing on themselves and also not worrying about people in front that are getting hurt by them jumping into the crowd like that. So there's a lot of factors. I don't think he has a fastball on him for sure, but I think that mentally, I think he was a little drained. So as we go on, we'll continue that hypothesis. But Lego is going to come right here. It has that booming drum, very present in the beginning right there. And there's this pick slide thing that Mike does in the beginning. I thought was very, very good. And it feels like it's that sound of a pick slide. And it feels like it gets a little extended though. And it can't be the whole entire time. But I had asked Javier, he is currently working on post-surgery from wisdom teeth right now. So I don't know if he'll respond. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what that sound was, but I thought it was interesting. Something that you can kind of get in little doses, but I think he did it to a higher capacity on this. This version, I don't know, the mix is still really tough. You're being overpowered by Dave and Jeff a real lot in Wygo, and that, I guess, took me out a little bit.
Yeah, I did notice that. Like the drums are really, really up front. But like I thought the performance, I thought it was fine. It was bouncy. It had some energy to it. Again, that's a song at the time that they were always playing early on to get everybody moving and get everybody going. But maybe a little too much at this point. So maybe they were pulling back a little bit.
We're going to tie the intro song in right now, Blue Man by Fugazi, and at this time, Fugazi was a huge, huge influence. There's going to be a suggestion tease at this show. And Ed starts singing, "I spend it all on the bag, on the train." I know I'm not getting that down right, but as I mentioned before, he's a little bit of Glue Man right here. Talk about this song a little bit because I feel like I know it, but I don't know it too well.
Yeah, it's a Gee song, and I think it's famous for that. The hook is that I spent it all. I know a lot of their early songs were about like AIDS and things like that. I think it's a little bit of that in there, like addiction sort of thing. But this is famously the one from the movie where Guy climbs up in the basketball hoop and is swinging upside down while the band is playing. Just a feral performance, maybe reminiscent of what Ed would do at some point. But yeah, really early Fugazi song too. And like, this is not one that they're known to do. Like, obviously, Suggestion was the big one. And then we know they bits of Bad Mouth here and there and Reclamation. But yeah, Glue Man is not one that they're known to do. But so it's interesting that it would come up here. But it's a really good song. I mean, if people aren't familiar, definitely go check it out.
And for something that many of you are familiar with, you do get a very, very slight, hard to imagine noodle.
I spent it all on the bag.
It's just that note, and that
That's all
kind
it
of
was at the time, yeah.
that kind of triggers in your mind, like, oh, okay, this starts to develop into something a little more once Lollapalooza comes around and everything like that. So, just little hints that I love from what they did with that song at the time. Jeremy's up next. And in Jeremy, I see where Ed is coming from, that he needs a little more to get into it. And he sounds okay, and the band sounds really good, but I feel like he was going through the motions with this one, and the ending kind of starts off intense and then sort of fizzles out at the end. It feels like he kind of used as much of his vocal power that he could to try to get really intense in it, and then by the end of it, he was just like, guys, I don't got it. So, I don't know. It's interesting because the next song is interesting too, because the next song is in a spot that it's never, ever, ever in. So, yeah, anything extra on Jeremy right there? It feels like this is sort of an ongoing thing very early on.
Yeah, again, you're waiting for the big moment and it just kind of never came. But the thing that stuck out to me, Stone's using a lot of delay on this. You could really hear the echo on the guitar more than usual, I thought.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I think it would come up in another song later. I'm not coming up with it in my head, but yeah, Following Up on Jeremy is a song that nobody really knew at the time. And we know Leash to be kind of like the encore song, even closer at this time. You know, you finish a set with Porch, and then you come back and you do Leash, like first or second song, and that was the spot for it. And usually, as time has gone by, it has been mainly an encore song. But right here, as the fifth song, it makes me wonder as to if this was a change on the fly. And there's going to be a notation here where you hear Ed say it. You can hear him in the line. It says, this was their idea to play this song now. And he kind of says it a little bit sarcastically, a little. And I'm wondering if the change was made to sort of get Ed back on the right track to really dig into this show.
That makes sense. I could see that. Maybe they could tell on stage that like something was off a little bit. And I'm looking right now. I think this is the first time that Leash has played this early. Everything I'm looking at, I'm going back. I mean, this is only the 21st performance. Everything I'm looking at is either in an encore or a closer, next to last, something like that. So, yeah, this is definitely a new thing that they were trying. Yeah, I know we talked about it a little bit before, but I don't love this here. Like, just feels like it's missing something, doesn't have the power and the grit that it normally has.
Yeah, now going through Live Footsteps, what you can do on every song page on Live Footsteps, and we need to mention more of this stuff because it feels like now that tour time is coming around, Dave and I have been talking a little bit about getting the Fantasy League back up, so hopefully you hear more about that very soon. But you can go to the song pages, and I'm on the Leash song page right now, and the bar is here. So there's a song position bar, And by color, you can hover over the color and you can tell. So like the gray one is the position, if it's been played, how many times it's been played in the 1 through 5 spot, which this is number 5. And if you hover over it, 2. That's it. This performance and some other performance are the only ones that were ever played in the first 5 songs. And then you dig in a little more, 6 through 10, there's 12 versions, 11 through 15, there's a lot, 55. And then you go up to 21 through 25, and there's 20, and 26 through 30, and there's 21. So like that feels like the majority come from when it's later in the set, more recently. I think a lot of that 11 to 15, because you got to think that most of the shows that were happening in 1991, 1992, where they were doing around like 12 to 15 songs per night, Leash would be, as I mentioned, in that encore spot. So that makes sense that there are 55 of those there, but everything else seems like it could be the more recent versions of Leash where it's been in encore 2s and been very, very late in the show.
Yeah, I'm curious now to find that other one where it was that early.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see and kind of go through the set if we have that boot, and we might not. It might just be something that's lost to time, but it would be interesting to see if the momentum shifted differently in that version. And I'm sure there's a way to do it. I will get in contact with Dave and maybe share that on the next episode. So
it's probably from like 2011 or something. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? All right. Ed is listening to the crowd here, and they're all saying, Eddie, jump into the audience. And he's like, jump into the audience. That's what they want? Well, I'd love to. I'm having a hard time singing. If you can help me, then I will. And this is one of my favorite songs that Stone plays. I don't think that Ed actually got into the crowd. And maybe there could have been a chance during the song, but this is sort of where the whole show gets turned upside its head. So Ed kind of gets distracted midway through the second verse, and it seems as though somebody had lost their glasses, potentially a stage diver or something of the likes. And Ed is trying really, really hard to find this person whose these spectacles belong to. Get to figure it out a little bit later in a very awkward situation. So it was a little awkward, but that's not even the brunt of it. Now, as they go on through the song, Ed gets distracted again, and we don't have video from this, so we don't know exactly what's going on, but we do know that people are running on top of the stage and going, this is a song that they've been listening to for months now since the record came out, and this is the single, so everybody wants to be a part of this one. So he's screaming at people. He's doing, hey, like yelling at them as if to tell them, like, knock it the fuck off. And this is really where the band starts to lose their patience.
Is that the question?
they just sort of take a moment and just end. Usually they'll kind of end it in a climactic manner and really play up that ending, but it was just sort of last chord done. All right, now we have to tell you guys that you're all being fucking assholes.
Yeah, and before I get into that, this reminded me the whole part when he's not singing and there's the whole glasses thing is happening. We used to do a thing at punk rock shows, and like you kind of like get in the pit and you want to be silly, and people would do the stupid moshing and like circle pits things. But we used to do a thing where we would get everybody on the ground, like you were looking for a contact lens, and that would be our mosh pit. Like everybody kind of crawling around on the ground, like combing through the floor, looking for a contact lens, and that's what I pictured happening here. Everyone stopping, and like Ed's on the ground, like combing through the carpet, like looking for these glasses. That really cracked me up, and then was a hilarious moment for me. But it doesn't last long because, yeah, like I said, the mood changes in this. Like in a live, like people saw the video, I'm guessing. You'd seen the Smells Like Teen Spirit video, and so you know, like, hey, we're gonna go mosh and go crazy. But in a club like this, yeah, you really have to be careful. And there was a little bit of that the night before where, you know, Ed had talked about breaking people's heads and things like that, but people are getting hurt at this point, it feels like.
Well, let's hear from Jeff Ament, who is probably the most frustrated here. He's really gonna give the crowd a piece of his mind. I'm sure he has a couple people in his head that he's eyeing in the crowd that's like really telling him, knock it the fuck off. So here's how pissed he was.
Jumping up here, don't know. There's people in the front row trying to watch the fucking show, crushing their heads, they're crushing their arms, stomping on the pedals, knocking us out of tune. It's not that cool up here, man. It's far cooler out there. So if you want to dance and jump up, jump right back off. But watch these people down here in the front.
It feels like maybe at the time it didn't take a whole lot to piss him off, but I mean, that's not great. It's not
you can
great.
hear it in his voice. He's fed up.
Yeah, when the band has to tell you to stop having fun because you're being, and it's fun to them. And in that position, when you're the crowd member, you're thinking, oh man, I'm at a rock show and I'm jumping off and down the stage, and you don't care about that you're jumping on top of people's heads and you're kicking them in the face and on and on and on. You know, that's why when we were 15, we got a talking to from our parents about, hey, don't go in the mosh pit, you're going to get hurt. Because they're right. You could have gotten hurt. Now, I've been in mosh pits before where they were dangerous. And I've been in mosh pits before where everybody had each other's back. If somebody fell, everybody stopped, picked somebody up, everybody clapped, and they went back to dancing and everything like that. But, you know, it depends on what band you're in. But
early 90s is different too.
Yes, because this is really the beginning of all of that. So Ed is also not very happy here either, and he kind of tells on that, and he's like, yeah, I'm sorry that the music has to suffer, but it was only recently that I was one of you. I was part of the crowd, and I care about you, and if people are getting hurt, I'm going to stop. And then he kind of directs this to security here, and he says, and if they are going to be taken off a stage, take them gently, sir, even if you're mad. So it does feel like they needed the talking to, but also Ed kind of playing a little devil's advocate and being like, hey, like, just be careful. It's okay. We want you guys to have fun. But as Jeff was saying, you don't want to ruin the equipment. You don't want to kick people in the head.
And don't leave it in the hands of the security because you know how they're going to do it.
Right. And thankfully that didn't transpire here. We didn't have a bigger situation where security had to take out somebody, and that could have been another distraction to the show where it could have called them off and everything like that. But yeah, it seemed like that aspect sort of stops here, or at least is managed. All right. The next performance is Black, and it does feel like you kind of think about how the set is designed here and the way that when thinking about where Leash was put, like maybe that's an addition to try to get Ed back into the show. Then Alive is kind of like, okay, we can work off of that momentum. But after Alive, you're kind of like, okay, we do need something to sort of mellow the crowd out a little bit. We need to get them to chill out. So, look, it's a very, very common combination for Alive and Black to be back to back like this. Alive was pretty much a mid-set song in 1992, and Black followed it up a lot. So I'm sure it was on the set list like this, but it feels like by design that should have happened no matter what was going on with the crowd.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. Like you said, they were doing it a lot. These two songs kind of found a home together. But yeah, the leash thing just throws it all off completely. I mean, this version of Black, like it's good, but again, it's very standard, like you mentioned with Even Flow. You can kind of tell by the length. Like, is it more standard towards the studio version, or is it something that they were expanding on and riffing on? And this version of Black doesn't have a lot of the extra stuff. I mean, we were only less than 2 weeks away from the unplugged version, and yeah, this one didn't have anything that stood out. And maybe that's going to be due to Ed and what he's going through the show, but yeah, it just didn't feel like it had that extra bit of weight behind it to give it that elevated into the realm of a great performance.
Out of all the performances in this show, I didn't think that this one was that bad at all. I liked kind of how the power was starting to develop and how it emanated and kind of what Mike was expressing. Sometimes in Black and very, very early versions, Mike doesn't quite connect the emotion to his solo yet. It feels like he's doing the solo kind of as the standard is within by the books for what was on the album, but it felt like he went somewhere with this. It felt like he kind of channeled something and brought it to the song, and it gave a little bit of emotional depth at the end, even when Ed is not doing anything like We Belong Together tag. It still sounded good in that aspect.
I wanted a Spectacles improv. I wish he had done the whole Spectacles thing during the song. That would have elevated it a little bit. That would have been because we're gonna get really into Spectacles.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw a spectacle with Alive, and now we're going to literally get into Spectacles. So, as mentioned before, they were looking for aforementioned Spectacles in Alive, and now the guy is apparently looking for them. It's like, no, we found them for you. We stopped everything and found them for you. You lost your Spectacles. No, you screwed up the whole song Alive, and we stopped the whole audience and found your Spectacles, and he's got them right over there. And then Stone, the smart ass as he is, chiming in, no, those were Ray-Bans.
Well, I feel bad because this totally would have been me. I totally would have lost my glasses at the show.
I don't know if that's better or worse than losing a contact lens, because at least you can find it, it's visible.
Sure.
So they're just fucking around while Ed has the glasses and says, I'm not going to give them back to you because you're going to lose them again. You'll get them back after the show. And I hope he saw things so much clearer in his Spectacles when he got them back. Digs into State of Love and Trust. And I don't know, I guess they need some drama before every song to get it to feel revved up. You know what I mean? Ed doesn't sound very good on this, but the band is super tight and they're motoring through this. And this is the one that I believe I had some thoughts about Mike with the delay effect too, because his solo at the end feels like he's kind of freestyling it in a way. And he's getting finger tap heavy with it and feels like it has a lot of that delay effect.
Yeah, I like when it goes into the slow part, when it gets down to just Jeff and Dave. I thought that was very, very good too.
And that is our thoughts on State of Love and Trust at this show. And now going into Once, I don't know. It feels like on once that whatever was ailing them, I think they've kind of forgot about it and it felt revved up. But also, as I kind of like to say about early versions of once, there was nothing shocking or earth shattering about this version. It was what it was. Now, Ed speaks in Dutch after this, and I am not going to try that one, but it's translated to I love you, goddammit. And we also in here get a very, very short suck my kiss, couple seconds that dun 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 dun, and that's it. So a lot of Chili Peppers references in this show. Porch is going to close your main set of 10 songs right here. And I thought this was a good version. I think the slow movement of the roller coaster kind of going up the track within the solo. And then once they get to the top and they start really doing that dun 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 dun, like you're about to take off. And that's when the ride truly begins. The jam was pretty fierce, highly energetic. And I'm going to talk about this because we haven't ever talked about this line at all. But when he usually does the improv of there's something I don't mind, I don't necessarily think much of it. I don't. But he extends it. He kind of changes this one up a little bit. He has more lyrics onto it, and it feels more developed than I ever remember it being. Also kind of made me think, and no one has ever stated this in any fashion. I asked a couple people, they said they had no information on this, but it seems like this could have been, and maybe it's just that one line, like there's something I don't mind. It feels like that line could have been from somewhere. So much of what was added into their sets seemed to be a reference from another song or something like that, but I wonder if that's kind of a loose reference to something that we just have not picked up on, because it feels, since he's gone back to it so much, it feels like it's just ingrained.
Yeah, and a lot of his best improvs will feel like that. You almost feel like this is too good to not be something, right? And it doesn't feel like he's coming up with it just off the cuff, like off the top of his head. It feels like it's rehearsed and he's got it. But I think that's just the way he thinks and the way he gets into the zone when he's feeling it. I think that the stuff just comes. Like, I think it's just an improv that he was able to kind of expand on. And yeah, I agree. I love this performance. I think it's one of the best of the night. Absolutely the showstopper at the time. So everything you want out of Porch, especially, we talked about, maybe some of the songs aren't built for small club versus an arena that they would get to later, but I think Porch translates either way. Like, I would love to have seen Porch in a 500-person club in 1992. Like, it just would have blown the roof off.
Yeah, this is one of a few Porches at the time where Ed just lays off, doesn't do anything fancy, doesn't get up on a big amp, doesn't get up on a rafter or anything like that. It could be due to how he's feeling at the time and his voice and everything like that. And there could be still some pent up frustration in his head from what happened a couple songs earlier, but there's no stunts. There's no nothing like that. So.
I think that's, that could be a good thing for the band because they don't have to kind of vamp and waste time for him to come back. They can just focus on what they're doing instead of having to wonder if Ed's going to kill himself in a rafter somewhere.
Right. And later this week, as we'll talk about, because I guess we're at the encore break, so let's pause for station identification. But the next and final late night series episode should be out very, very soon. And that is about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And one thing that attaches to what you just said is that in Ed's speech, he apologizes to the band because he's like, I'm sorry that these guys had to worry every single time that I went out there risking my life, but they didn't know when they hired me that I was a huge Evil Knievel fan. So that's what they were dealing with every night, 1991 to 1992 right there. Let's thank a brand new patron to the Giggle Egg tier. Awesome. Very cool. We love when people join up on the Giggle Egg tier. We love when people join up on the bonus and the Horizon Leg tier as well. But let's say thank you to Matthew Davies. Thank you to Matthew Davies.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you for joining. And for joining on the Giggle Egg tier, you know what you get. An episode request. You get to pitch us an episode that we have never covered on our podcast before. And then just like today and what we're doing here, you get to have us cover it and talk about it. Would love to see what you come up with. Now, it's a great time to be joining Patreon, of course. Again, we put out the Late Night Series episode last week. That is the penultimate episode of the series. That's the Colbert performance in 2015, right before the band did Global Citizens Festival. And then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame seems to be the one to tie everything all together. And it's going to be a longer episode because we got to go through speeches and songs and Letterman's introduction and stuff like that. So that should be a lot of fun. And hopefully people are really looking forward to that one because it is a truly important moment in their history, whether or not you think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is legitimate or not because they don't have X and Y bands or whatever. You know, look, all Hall of Fames are subjective in ways, but, you know, Pearl Jam, I remember talking to somebody, I might have been Stephen Hayden, but I remember somebody saying that when they were in discussions, when there was the panel together that was in discussions for who was going to get in, and Pearl Jam came up, they were like, yeah, next, they're in. Okay, next. Like that. And I know that everybody has to vote on it individually, but there was no like debate about it. Everybody just was surefire that Pearl Jam was in. And it was a special moment for them. And honestly, a special moment for the fan base too, because it feels like for a lot of it that we helped propel them to that moment. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and the performances that preceded. So if you would like to listen to it, then all you got to do is join up on our Patreon. And now, again, is a good time to join because we are getting closer and closer to the tour. And when the tour happens, what's going to happen? Reaction episodes. That's right. After every single show on this tour, we will have a reaction episode featuring people that are out from sight, that are giving their instant reaction to what they just saw at the shows, especially for the first couple where you're getting to hear these Dark Matter songs for the first time. You'll get to hear some pretty fresh takes and kind of get the evolution of how it all was put together. So we love being able to be the outlet in the same fashion that people want to listen to a post-game report for a football game or a baseball game or something like that. We love that we can give this to you guys, and we're trying to make this even bigger this year by making more of a presence. And a lot of that comes from the help from you guys, because I think that with your guys' help, we can really, really put together something awesome. And that means putting together a street team. I mentioned it last week. Mar is going to help out with that and be a really big help. And we need as many people as possible for any show to help out, handing out flyers, holding up a flag during when the recording's going on, pulling people together to come in and join the recording, just getting ourselves out there and kind of making it a thing at the shows. Because last year when we were in Chicago, yeah, a bunch of people were kind of huddled up together and all that, but nobody would have known what we were doing if they went up to us. A couple of people looked over and they're like, okay. And they went about their business, but nobody knew that we were recording a podcast. So that might interest people coming right out of the show that also feel like, hey, I want to talk about this because I'm blown away right now. So that's kind of what we're looking forward to here. And as time goes on, hopefully we can really nail down a good routine and get those episodes out to you the next day. And the West Coast stuff will be tough, but we're going to do our best with that. So if you're interested in that and interested in joining on Patreon, you can join on one of 3 tiers. The bonus leg tier is only $1 a month. It will get you every episode that's on the Patreon. And now here I'm going to throw something out there. So I've been looking to find ways to kind of make the Giggle Egg tier more attractive. And I think I found it. So if you join up on the Giggle Egg or Horizon Leg tier, which is $5 a month and $10 a month respectively, every week I will post the bootleg of the show that we're about to cover over on Patreon for you guys to download. And that way you can do our favorite thing. You guys can be able to listen to the show before listening to the episode and have your take and some of your thoughts and coincide it with what we're talking about, what we're thinking, what we're picking up from this. That way you guys get to be so much more invested in the podcast. And look, I love that people go into it and they are saying, oh, I don't know this show. I just want to hear what happened. And they get in, they're like, okay, yeah, I get this. I like the stories and I like the performances and stuff like that. But I feel like if more people did that, and I know there's a lot of our core people that really do dig in and do that. And for that, like, we can't thank them enough. And you guys know who you are that do that. But hopefully this is a way for you guys to get more invested in participating in this podcast, because then on our Facebook or Twitter post, you can go back and be like, hey, I saw this from this. How come you didn't talk about this? Or are you going to talk about this? So it'd be cool to have some back and forth. And maybe on some episodes, we'll be able to do a little bit of a recap from what you guys thought. Maybe it's an extra episode to Patreon or something like that. But it would be cool to kind of see where your guys are coming from listening to these shows and your point of view. So we're going to start that with the next episode for the next week, and that will be specifically on the Giggle Leg or Horizon Leg tier. So if you're not on either of those tiers, you are on the bonus leg tier, you would have to move up a tier in order to get that perk. But hopefully that is something that you guys are interested in, and hopefully that it all kind of helps what we're trying to achieve on this tour and in this year as well. So to do that, patreon.com/live on 4 legs, or you can download the Patreon app and search for Live on 4 Legs, or you can go to liveon4legs.com. A lot of material will be up there once the album kicks in and once the tour kicks in. We're really going to start putting the impact on the website again, but every single page, you can go up to the top and click the Become a Patron button, and then you'll be there. And that's all you got to do to help us out. 1 or 2 more things. So I just want to give the heads up to people. This had been talked about, and this is unofficial right now. But there are talks about doing Pearl Jam Karaoke 3. And this is controversial, I know, because the first 2 were great. They were so much fun. But you all know what happened. They were basically spreader events.
COVID is very excited for this.
Right. I'm not going to reveal a location just yet because, again, nothing is set in stone, but I like the progression that I'm making with a couple people that I've been talking to. And hopefully we can do it on the show that I'm thinking about, and I think it would be good for everybody and be a nice little event. So keep that in mind. Yeah, everybody wears a mask to this one, right? Everyone wears a mask, and just keep it in mind for stuff that we can be doing in the not so distant future on this tour. Also, keep this in mind. We are continuing to work on the tour t-shirt and hoping that it can be done in more than enough time to get it out to you guys before the May shows begin. So keep that in mind. We're looking forward to getting you guys what you deserve. And a lot of people got the tour shirt from last year. We have a cool idea. Let's see how it comes about. Let's see how it looks on the shirt. But when it's time to reveal the art, we'll reveal the art. So, yeah, if you're interested in that, just keep paying attention. Keep listening to the podcast. We will tell you guys when it's all coming. All right. That's all we need to say there. Back to the rock for 2.5 more songs. Ed says, I've been sitting right behind there. I never left. I was just listening to you. And the way that he says that, he says with a very light intonation. And it's kind of weird. I don't know why I just thought about this when listening to this show. But sometimes when he talks early on in 91, 92, not much in 93, but it's there a little bit, but a little bit of the shyness. You know who he sounds like? He kind of sounds like Michael Jackson.
I've been sitting right behind there the whole time. I never left. I was just listening to you.
Just that little...
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, just the lightness in his voice and kind of like trying not to overstimulate his vocal cords.
The innocence a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, innocence, definitely. Especially you can feel it with some of those shows in front of crowds that he's not familiar with yet. Obviously, you know, he has a history going back to when he was really, really young listening to the Jackson 5, so it could be that he was just entirely influenced by them, and that's kind of what he had heard for so long. When you're young, you get something into your head, and sometimes you don't realize that you do it because, you know, sometimes I can still catch myself, you know, talking like Homer Simpson in ways, you know, like the way that I tell jokes or finish jokes or something like that kind of sounds like Homer Simpson because I spent a lot of times in my youth watching The Simpsons, and I wonder if that kind of happened with Ed and Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I don't think it's, you know, I think that's where it ends. But yeah, I think that, it's just that shyness. I mean, he's talked about that, like, early on, like, being kind of overwhelmed and not real comfortable in front of these crowds and everything. But, you know, after 92, that quickly goes away.
And I like that he was able to build that confidence over time because there are still people, and it could just be, maybe it's not bands, but like, you know, celebrities, athletes, whatever, that will still try and act in a way that's like, oh, well, I'm just from a small town. I don't deserve
it. Comes off as fake. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that Ed found his voice and was able to use it prominently after the kind of the shy period went away. But yeah, now he's getting some requests from the crowd, and you can hear this. Like, there's one guy that asks clearly if he can play I've Got a Feeling for Me. He says, can you play I've Got a Feeling for Me? Not us, just for me. And to which Ed responds, all by myself? And he kind of says, yeah, well, maybe. And he's just kind of trying to direct traffic a little bit because the crowd's just yelling shit at him. So somebody says wash, and he thinks they say oceans, but instead he just decides to do a suggestion tag.
She did nothing to disturb him. He's just a straight prison. We sit back like they taught us. Keep quiet like they taught us. He wants to prove it. She does nothing to remove it. We don't want anyone to mind us. Play the role that they've assigned us. He does nothing to conceal it. It's just as her cause he wants to feel it. We don't want anyone to mind us. Play the role that they've assigned us. She does nothing to remove it. It's just as her cause he wants to prove it. Or we sit back like they taught us. Or keep quiet like they taught us. He wants to prove it. She does nothing to remove it. We don't want anyone to mind us. Play the role that they've assigned us. She does nothing to conceal it. It's just as her cause he wants to feel it. We blame her for being there.
It almost feels like the band hears him midway through, and it's like they know that that might be their cue to walk on stage, and Dave
Yeah.
gets to the kit and starts playing kind of halfway through, and it does feel almost like a longer version of the suggestion
sure.
cheese than we usually
sure.
get, and he loops the lyrics maybe once or twice.
Yeah, it's almost the complete lyrics. They were using it as kind of an intro, kind of a transitionary thing, but this feels like a very solitary performance. Like he went for it on this one. Yeah, long, one of the longest ones I've ever heard.
That is going to take you. There are 2 more songs left in the set. That's going to take you into Deep right here. And I don't have a whole lot on this version of Deep. It does feel like, as you kind of mentioned before, I think it was with Even Flow, that some of the personality that Ed has on some of these songs kind of gets sucked out of him at this show. And Deep, you need a specific type of Ed to have a Deep where it turns your head. You know, you have to have him doing like all of the little embellishes in the chorus and everything like that can't touch the bottom, like all of those little things. And the yell in the beginning. And this, it doesn't have the aggression and ferocity that you want from a 1992 version. And again, I was hoping that because it was the end of the set, that maybe he was just like, all right, that's it. Let's give him everything I got. Let's really leave on a high note. But he didn't quite get there.
Yeah, and I think it's a weird choice. That Deep and Leash, I think, were switched here. I think if you look, they were playing Deep right in that number 5, number 6 spot every night.
Makes sense.
And Leash was getting played in the encore. So I think that they got flipped here. And it didn't do Leash any favors. I don't think it does Deep any favors here, too. I don't think it fits coming out of an encore like that. And the suggestion thing is interesting. Maybe they just come off Den Haag, a few days earlier, doing the saying no thing and maybe trying to recapture some of that. But yeah, Deep when it started, I just was like, interesting. Like that just didn't feel like the right spot for it. Maybe knowing that this is not on the more aggressive side of shows, maybe you do go in and do a cover, and maybe they do something a little more lighthearted where it doesn't have to push the voice and scream. But yeah, in retrospect, it's easy to go back. But yeah, just flipping Leash and Deep here, I don't think it worked quite the way that they expected.
Yeah, and look, you can absolutely take chances. You can take chances, and it's okay, especially at this time. You only have around 16 songs in your arsenal. Maybe a couple more if you decide that you want to try a new cover or an improv jam every now and again, but there's not much to go off of. So to switch things up, change songs, add songs, whatever, like this is the time to do it. And they have to be thinking to themselves like, we're going to be doing some big tours later this year, so we got to figure out what those tours are going to look like. And perhaps in an alternate universe, Leash is a great number 4, number 5 song, and then Deep was an encore song, and it didn't work out that way, and I think they noticed it. So, we're all on the same page here. This is kind of an anomaly within that. Ed goes back to mentioning I've Got a Feeling guy, and the guy wants it to be played just for him. And I guess at this point, he's just making suggestions out here, and it feels like he's opening the floor to some other people and kind of mentions, somebody said garden, and it feels like the band all agreed on that because Jeff says democracy in this band at work. So I wonder if he looked back and said, I've got a feeling, and everyone's like, we just did that at a big show. Like, we can't recapture that magic right now.
Yeah.
Who knows what they were thinking, but
they did it the next night.
They did do it the next night, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, garden was the choice, and there's a whole thing with units here. Mike says, it's actually bigger than the actual unit. I don't know what was said before that off mic to make Mike say that, but Ed's rebuttal was, my unit is almost as big as you, Mike. And that's the first time I've ever talked about my unit in public. And then we get a little bit of a snippet of Outshined, which the crowd responds very well to. Jeff says, the only thing better than this is if a band came and played all Seattle band covers. That's something that Balkan mentioned before. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be great? And Ed's like, oh, I hope they wouldn't play any of our songs because I don't even know if I want to be from Seattle anymore because it's starting to bug me. Bach had mentioned that. So here's my take. I think you have a very similar one, but I'll leave that for you to share. My take on it is that because everybody was talking about the town and it was everywhere, and it wasn't necessarily about the music per se or the art per se. It was about the scene. It was about the style, the trends, and kind of what the mainstream media was turning this little Pacific Northwest city that nobody really had on their radar into. And I think a lot of that frustrated the band because they just wanted to play. They didn't want to be seen as a growing trend, especially this early on, because I think Jeff said something. He said something like, we kind of wanted the REM ascension, where REM kind of started on the underground and then gradually got to be part of the mainstream and have singles on the radio and all that, and not just college radio. But because everything just blew up so quickly, that never got to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to Overblown by Mudhoney, right? Everybody loves us. Everybody loves our town.
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking lately, time for leaving it now. I thought about this too when they were talking about the Seattle cover band. It reminded me of when Me First and the Gimme Gimmes had two separate bands going around touring at the same time. And if Seattle had been a little bit more capitalist and a little bit more, ambitious, they could have put together a band maybe like Scott McCaughey, who later toured with REM, who's in the Young Fresh Fellows, like get a bunch of guys together and have them tour around and just play Smells Like Teen Spirit, Alive, Outshined, blah, 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 whatever. How shitty would that have been? Like, come see Seattle. Like, I'm glad that didn't happen, but in a world where like the Suits are running Sub Pop, then maybe that does happen and it all goes to shit much earlier.
Yeah, you know what? You kind of get that now with cover bands.
Sure.
I see a lot of, up here, I think there's a band called Smells Like Nirvana that plays a lot. And apparently they're really good, but it's always billed as 90s night. And the flyer for it is always like, it's got Dark Martens on it and Space
Flannel
Needle or
shirt,
something
yeah.
like that. Like, hey, come relive your childhood and your favorite bands from when you were 14 years old watching MTV. And it's just,
Nostalgia is
like,
a powerful drug.
It is, but it's just like, come on, just say the band is coming and talk about the band. Don't give me everything else. Anyway, this is our last song of the night. It is Garden. They do take the Garden request, but they do not take the I've Got a Feeling request. And this is the first out of two shows where it would close the night. Not something common, as a lot of things are happening here, just out of place. So, what kind of presence does this have to have in order for this to leave the imprint on the crowd as the last moment that they're going to see? And it seems like at a really good show, a show where the band is locked in, where Ed is at full capacity, that this could work. This could work really well. But that's not the case. I don't think it was bad at all. I think it was a fine performance, but I think it was sort of like, let's finish and get out of here. And again, it's Ed not going for it and basically saying, I'll wait till tomorrow to finish, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, again, the performance is good. I mean, Garden can get to that place where it feels epic and it feels big. But, yeah, this felt like you're kind of going out with a whimper a little bit. Even Ed at the end just goes, all right, see you around. And, like, they're just kind of done. The only song off of 10 that wasn't played was Oceans, so you're getting almost everything there. Deep in Garden to close out a show it's just strange. I mean, it looks strange on paper, and something about it just felt off.
or on a good show where they're really connecting with the crowd and have a good night and a positive night, they do take that I've Got a Feeling request.
Yeah.
Or they do Rockin' in the Free World. I can't remember if the Germany shows, I think the Germany shows were after this because that's where it debuted. So we're not there just yet. We're there in like a week after this time. But I've Got a Feeling was the cover of this era. And giving them that and going home off of that on a regular night would have been a nice way to sing it. But that, again, does not happen. It's so long, see you later, walk off, and on to the next one. So that leaves us with all of the little things that we do at the end of the show here, including the top 3. So go first, you go at it, and then I'll take a stab at it.
Well, I'm tempted to have it be all Fugazi, but I will spare everyone that. I'm only going to do one. My number 3 is Suggestion. My number 2 is it's tough. I'm gonna say State of Love and Trust is 2 and Porch is number 1.
Yeah, before we started recording, I said to you I don't know what my 3 would be. But I think this section was kind of the best of the night, and I'll skip one of the songs in this section. So I'm just going to go from front to back. I'm going to go Black number 3, State of Love and Trust number 2, Porch number 1. I feel like those stood out the most. All right. Rating time. Again, tee them up, and I'll see if I can follow up.
Yeah, this is not, one of those classic. I mean, it's surrounded by Den Haag and Utrecht and all the things that we talked about. And it's just not one of those type of shows, so it's not going to reach that upper echelon. I'm at a 6.5 on this one.
I think I'm going to give this the worst rating I've ever given a show.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know if
everybody leans forward in their chair a little bit.
I don't know if I've ever given anything under a 6. Now, you can go back to the videotape on that, and you can check the notes and check all the episodes, and maybe there is something.
Currently looking. I see a 5.5.
On what?
San Jose 2011.
Oh, God. And, okay, San Jose 2011. I thought you were going to say San Jose 1995.
No.
I'm like, no, my rating was not that bad for that. Okay.
Not that San Jose. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That shit was weird. I can't, in my heart, go lower than this because it's not like this show was a complete train wreck. It just felt unmotivated and had some factors that didn't make for a pleasant experience. So this is a 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's my lowest rated show.
All right.
And who knows if I'll ever give anything a 5 again. I'm not going to predict it, though.
Yeah.
But next week, we're going to go back to doing the 1994 series here, where we're covering shows that were on that tour for the 30th anniversary of that tour. We'll tell some more stories as the weeks go by. And next week, we are going to talk about Memphis from that year. So for anybody that was at that show or just want to hear the story of Memphis, because this is not one of the shows in 1994 that you think of as being a standout, but it's part of the tour. And I think because of that, I like the idea of covering it because we can really dig into something and discover things. So that will be next week. Memphis 1994. All right. Well, I hope that did the show some justice. I'm sorry, Balk, that it had to be the lowest rated show of all time. But look, we really, really appreciate your story, and we appreciate you bringing this to the table. Again, I think it's better to get it over with now than to do it in 2035 or whatever. And just as a, hey, we just need to do this show, because I'm sure that'll come in the not so distant future. But I like talking about it. At least there was a lot of good talking points. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. And now we close the book on this chapter. So, hey, if you guys liked what you heard or just like the stories that we tell and you're not subscribed on any of the platforms, doesn't matter, big or small, but the ones that I'll put to the forefront like I do every week are Apple Podcast and Spotify. And what I didn't realize, because I say this every week, on Apple, you can leave a comment and let people know how you feel. On Spotify, you can leave a comment and let people know how you feel. And it's different because on Apple, you're commenting on the main page where everybody's just looking at the content in your episode. On Spotify, you're commenting on individual episodes. So if there's something that you liked about this episode, if there's something that you want more information on from this episode, then please feel free, comment. We will try and get back to you. Maybe read it on the show at some point, but it is good to have continuous conversations and continuous dialogue within what we're doing because it helps us know what you guys want, and hopefully that kind of transfers to the next person that wants something good because it all helps. And hey, I didn't even say leave us a 5-star rating. Do that too. I thought that is kind of obvious by now, but leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a comment. Anything that could help put this to the forefront, and subscribe on YouTube as well. Hoping to get some YouTube stuff out there this year as I take tour footage and things like that. Maybe more will come about, but yeah, that's kind of all there is to it. And hopefully you guys are following on social media and everything because that's where the real community is, especially on the Pearl Jam podcast community group through Facebook. All right, let's officially close this. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you all already, miss you always. I hope the guy found his spectacles. And if he can see clearly, then all he has to do is see 2 years into the future and swim across international streams where we will cover a 1994 show. Until then, see you on the pod.
I was sitting there the whole time.
No, we found them for you. We stopped everything and found them for you. What? You lost your spectacles. No, you screwed up the whole song a lot, man. We stopped the whole audience and found your spectacles. He's got them right over there. Those are your spectacles.
No, man, his were Ray-Bans.
We stopped everything for you, just for you. See, this is them right here. But I'm not gonna give them back because you're gonna lose them again. You'll get them back after the show.